Hi there, this is Miss Caitlin from Phoebo Kids Art Academy, and today I'm going to be showing you a project for MLK Day. So before we begin, I'm just going to show you some pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and tell you a little bit about him. All right, so you've probably learned about Dr. King in school already, but Dr. King was a minister and activist. He was the sort of spokesperson and the leader, or at least the most visible leader, of the civil rights movement from about the mid-50s to the late 60s. He fought for equality and human rights, peace and justice for African Americans and those who were economically disadvantaged and even victims of injustice. Now, the way that he went about it was through peaceful protest. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our project, but here are some pictures of him doing his speeches. His most famous speech, of course, is the I Have a Dream. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the project that we're going to be making today. So we're going to be making this portrait of Dr. King, and I have written the word peace down here at the bottom, but you get to write whichever one that resonates most strongly with you. I have some other words written into the background of my piece, and let me just go ahead and show you what kind of things that I used for this project. Now, what's cool about this project is you can really use whatever you've got at home, but I'm going to be using some thick paper that can handle watercolor. I'm also going to be using some oil pastels, as well as a pencil and eraser to draw, and I have a white paint pen to just add in stars and the words on top at the very end of the project. Now, I'm going to be using a marker to draw, but you guys, when you go to color, again, you can use whatever you've got available. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to move some of these items off to the side. And you can go ahead and take out your piece of paper that you'd like to work on today. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to be using a marker to draw, but you could really just use your pencil. All right, and we're just going to jump right into it. Now, you could see from our example that that picture is pretty advanced. It's very realistic. We are trying to capture a likeness here. So I'm going to draw this very much basic for anybody who maybe is a little bit intimidated by drawing realistic portraits. But for any of my friends who are feeling a little bit more advanced, you can feel free to add in much more detail. I encourage anyone who is maybe watching this at home to maybe have a picture of Dr. King off to the side to use as a reference so that you can kind of double check your work. All right, let's go ahead and begin. First, turn your paper vertical so that it's tall like a milkshake. So that way we can fit the face properly. And the shape that we're going to be drawing is an oval. So for this oval, we want it to be kind of right about here on our paper, very big, because again, his face is the main subject. Now again, you're doing this in pencil, I'm doing this in marker so you can see. That's okay if the oval isn't perfect. You can take the time to sort of adjust and make it how you need to. All right, from here, let's go ahead and add in some facial features. So for this, for the eyes, we want them to usually be about halfway on the face. So for his eyes, we're going to draw them here. Now again, this is where I would encourage you to have maybe like a reference or just a picture of Dr. King up nearby so that you can have the likeness captured. If you are a more advanced art student, you might be looking at the reference of Dr. King and being like, I see how his eye shape is different. But for everybody else, let's go ahead and just draw two rainbow shapes, here and here for his eyes. Now in our picture today, he's kind of looking off to the side. So instead of drawing a complete circle, when our eyes are relaxed, we only see about maybe, 3/4 of it. So you don't need to draw a whole circle, but you definitely want to draw almost a circle for each eye. From here, we can go ahead and draw the bottom part of the eye. Everybody's got a different eye shape. Dr. King's are a little bit more, they look a lot like a leaf, or like an almond shape. So I'm going to start on one corner here. I want this to be very delicate. Lower lids, the kind of skin in the eyelid here is very delicate. So just try your best to draw a very delicate, almost like U shape here. Okay. From here we can go ahead and add in the eyebrows. Now for the eyebrows, you want to go just above the eye. You're going to draw essentially another rainbow shape. Now Dr. King's eyebrows are rounded on the sides here, at least from what I can tell in the pictures. So you're going to draw like a curved line and a curved line And then you're just going to draw a curved line back that connects to the tail of the eyebrow. That's the part of your eyebrow that's at the end. All right, we'll draw a little bit more of the details under his eyes in a moment, but we want to make sure we put in the rest of the facial features. Let's go ahead and draw the nose. So for the nose goes halfway between your eyes and your chin. So for his nose, we're going to draw the nostrils first. So we want them to go right about here. For the nostril, it's almost like a leaf shape. So you're going to draw a curved line back, curved line back. Now for the nose, you can see there's lots of detail happening here on our picture. Again, that's pretty advanced. I'm going to be giving you just the basic lines that are going to get you the nose in the right spot, in the right shape. So now for the sides of the nostrils, this part right here, the shape of Dr. King's nose is kind of like a C shape on the sides here. So you're just going to draw curved line and curved line. Now onto the lips. Now for the lips, you can see in pictures that there's almost like this very defined letter M shape. So lips go halfway, or rather the mouth goes halfway between the nose and the chin. So you are going to go ahead and draw a very wide letter M. This is going to separate the upper from the lower lip. Then we can go ahead and draw the upper lip. It's that same shape one more time. Again, just making it very simple for us today. And then his lower lip is not quite a U shape. It's a little something like this. It is a almost diagonal, curved line, diagonal. Now, if at any point you just need to pause the video so that you can take your time and do your lines how you like, go for it. There is no rush with this project. Moving right along, we need to go ahead and just add in some details here. He has a mustache, so we're going to go ahead and add that in. Now, this part, I always forget what it's called, but it's the part that goes right between your nose and your upper lip. I think it's called an angel's kiss. Now, for that, when you have a mustache, you can clearly see it a lot of the times. It's kind of a part of it. So right between the nostrils here, but not touching them, draw a U shape. One side, draw a curved line out. Other side, curved line out. Go underneath, draw another curved line. Curved line down, curved line down. Now these two curved lines should touch the corners of the mouth. Then you can just close that shape off and you've got a mustache. All right, so now let's go ahead and add in sort of the details underneath the eyes. Now, when you are an adult, sometimes you'll see other parts of your facial features kind of become a little bit more pronounced. As you get older, sometimes you can see like this lower lid, parts of it can be a little bit pronounced. So we're gonna add that in because you can actually see that in some photos of Dr. King. Now this, when you're drawing it, think very delicate, very light. You don't want this to be dark. You wanna make this seem like, again, it's very light, sensitive part of the eye right here. So you're gonna go underneath each eye and you're just gonna draw very gentle little curved line, both sides. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and add in the ears. You're gonna go to the left side and add in a very tall letter C. And because of the way that Dr. King is facing in our picture, you're not really gonna see all of the other ear, you're just gonna see kind of a little bit of it. Now this shape is almost like a very wide number 3. So check this out. I'm gonna draw a very wide, almost number 3 on the side there. For this ear, you're gonna add in a curve, a curved line. We won't add much more detail than that just for this video, but again, feel free to get more advanced, look at a picture of Dr. King and draw in as much detail as you desire. Now you could probably see in the picture that I'm drawing, I have not drawn any of the specific contours of his face. Again, that's just to make it easy for any of my younger friends who are maybe watching today. But if you are an older, more advanced art student, maybe you're an older grade, I'm expecting you to kind of get in there and draw the different contour lines of the face and of the hair. Now we're gonna go ahead and draw the hair in. Dr. King has very short hair. So we're gonna go to the side of the ear. We're gonna draw a big curved line up, check this out. Go around, and as we kind of near the right side of the face, we want to pull that in because again of the way that he's facing. Once you get to the right side, you're just going to draw a curved line out, back in that touches the ear. And there we have the face all done. Again, for maybe some more advanced students, feel free to just kind of add in contour lines for like the hair, the cheeks, the jaw, anything you'd like. Now this next part is kind of like a color blocked area where we see, there's the shading for the neck, we see the tie and the suit jacket and the shirt, but they're not like super defined. They really are just like blocked in there. So we're gonna do that for our picture too. So go ahead and take your pencil, I'm using my marker, go underneath the chin, draw a little line down. Then you can go right about here on the chin. It's kind of almost in the middle, but not quite. You can draw a very long diagonal line. And then we're going to draw in the necktie that he's wearing. So we're going to draw a curved line, and a diagonal line, and then we're going to draw a diagonal line coming out here. Now this is actually going to be like the shoulder or a part of his jacket. It's coming off on the side here. So you can just draw a diagonal. Then go ahead and close off this area with a horizontal line. Head on over to the left side. Don't start right next to the cheek, kind of move away from it and draw a curved line down, curved line up. This is kind of leading into his shoulder, short line down, and then connect. This negative space here, we can actually use the white of the paper to sort of create that look of the shirt collar in the picture. All right, so we have everything we need for the portrait. Now we need to go ahead and have a word on the bottom. Now I'm going to write peace because it's the same one in my example, but you could choose a different word that maybe you associate with Dr. King. You could do justice, you could do dream. Dream is a really important one. You could write equality or even community. Community is a really big part of his work. Community is going to be kind of a big word to fit in here, so just be careful once you add it in. You could do bubble letters like me, or you could even write in cursive. That's going to be up to you. So go ahead and pick a word. Let's go ahead and write it down here on the bottom. Now, if you're looking at this picture and you're wondering, hey, I feel like I maybe have seen this somewhere before, this piece is actually inspired by a very famous poster of former President Barack Obama, where it's not black and white, it's red, white, and blue. And it kind of has him also staring off into the distance, and it says hope, I believe, down at the bottom. It has this very graphic design sort of look to it. Now, other people have had similar ideas where they will make a picture of Dr. King also in that similar style. They might write different words like dream, which I encourage you, again, write your own word on the bottom there that maybe you associate with his work. But that's where our inspiration is coming from today. All right, so I've got almost all the letters. I'm gonna draw the last E. There we go. Now, if you want, if maybe you don't have a white paint pen or you're doing, this project with different materials, you could go ahead and add in some items into your background. Don't add too many because, again, we want the main focus to be on the face. But if you want to add in stars right now or any of these words, you can. I added mine at the end because I have a white paint pen, but you could add yours now if you'd like. Okay, so there we have the finished drawing. I'm going to do just a few coloring steps with you, so at least I can get you started. But for this project, you can really have a lot of fun working on it on your own, especially because I know a lot of different levels of students are watching this picture or watching this video. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to outline with a dark material. Now we are doing red, white, and blue today, so that dark material should probably be a dark blue color. This is going to help just kind of anchor down the lines. Now, you could see this looks just fine with like a blue marker if you want to outline with that, but I'm going to also outline with a blue oil pastel. Now, do be careful if you are going to outline in oil pastel like I'm about to, because oil pastels, they've got a pretty big sort of like end to them. So you might have to be careful as you outline, just being aware of what part of the oil pastel you're using, but it can still work wonders. Now I'll outline a couple things here with the oil pastel just so that you can see how it looks. But for the sake of the video, I will not be outlining all of it, but I encourage you to outline everything. Okay. And the nostrils, make sure we get those filled. If you want to fill in the nostrils with your material that you're using, go for it. And if you get little oil pastel crumbs like you see right there, you can just kind of tap them off to the side and you'll be good to go. Try not to rub the oil pastel with your finger. All right. Now, Martin Luther King Day, or MLK Day, has been a federal holiday since 1986. Which, if we think about it, it's really not that long ago. And really, his work, when he was doing his work and his advocacy, it was only just over maybe 50 years ago, or 60, depending on if you're starting in the mid-50s. A really big component of his work was achieving, equality, justice, and community through peace and peaceful means. Very similar to Gandhi, who played an extremely important role in India's independence, who also did his work through peaceful means. Now, even though Dr. King did his work through peaceful means, it was still quite hard to do. So peaceful protest was a really important part of his work, as well as what we call sit-ins. And probably one of the most memorable, there's a lot of really memorable events that have happened, but probably the one that propelled him into this sort of spokesperson role, into this very visible role, was the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Now, if you are familiar with Ms. Rosa Parks, you probably know this story. Now, in those days, very long time ago, well, again, not that long ago, but in the time where Dr. King lived, and especially in this part of the United States, in Montgomery, Alabama, people who were white and people who were African American, or some people may say black, but again, that really depends on who you ask. They were segregated. That means that people who were African American were not allowed to be in the same space, or even sometimes do the same things as people who were white. One of those things was sitting on particular sides of the bus, or sitting in particular spots on the bus. Also, you can outline this with an oil pastel, but I'm actually going to leave it. I'm going to use my oil pastel to lightly fill in some details on the face, like the eyes, the hair, the mustache. If you're using a different material and you're not using oil pastel and watercolor like me, you could just fill these in completely. But if you are using oil pastel and watercolor, press light with that oil pastel. All right, so Rosa Parks obviously saw the injustice in this. It's like, why should people have to be separated? Why do African Americans have to sit on this side of the bus? So, because she has the same right to sit where she pleases, and she knew this, she sat on a part of the bus that was sectioned off for only white people. Now, obviously, that's wrong. But she was still arrested for it because a white passenger complained. And this sparked a really big coordinated event amongst activists at the time. And this is referred to as the event of the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Now, Dr. King also lived in Montgomery, and obviously a big part of his community being a minister. And he kind of became, he was sort of like appointed almost to be like this leader for this movement. The Montgomery Bus Boycott, absolutely incredible, the coordination that went into it. It lasted over 300 days. I actually wrote it down. 381 days it lasted. And so people, they boycotted the transportation system, and it cost just a lot of money. I'm not sure if millions, I might have to double check on that, but it cost the transportation system a lot of money. And so they kind of had to make, adjustments, figure out like, yeah, we need to let people sit where they want to on, our bus. Now, saying that, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, right? Like, people can't sit in certain parts of the bus, really? But it's a really big issue. Schools were even segregated. Like I said, some people had segregated water fountains. People who were African American couldn't drink from water fountains that were designated for people who were white. It's absolutely terrible. Now, I know these topics are really heavy. They're very serious, but talking about them is important because it gives us an idea of, or rather a scope for how important Dr. King was and is, and why his work was important. And what does peace look like, and what does that work look like to do in order to achieve it? All right, so I've added in that oil pastel. I'm going to go ahead now and switch into some watercolor and talk to you a little bit more about some of the peaceful ways he protested and did his work. All right, I'm going to set my oil pastels off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and take out the watercolors. Now, I am going to very simply use my watercolors here. I am going to color in half the face red, half the face blue. Again, very much inspired by that poster. But if you are, again, feeling a little bit more advanced, you could really get into the shading for this. So I will leave this picture here if you want to use it as a reference for any of my friends who want to do that. You can pause the video and just color in. But for the rest of my friends who are like, hey, I just want a relaxing time with this project, I don't know if I can handle all that shading, that's okay. I totally understand. Let's go ahead and work on that together. All right, so I'm actually going to start with the red watercolor because red's my favorite color. Also, if I try to do blue right now, it's a lot darker than red, and so it'll kind of bleed into that, and we just don't want that whole mess happening. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the right half of the face with red, kind of being mindful of the facial features as well. Now, another really big thing that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did was help organize these things called sit-ins. So as I mentioned, where Dr. King lived, and in a lot of parts of the United States, people who are African American couldn't sit or even be in some restaurants or places unless they were white. The places were only designated for white people, or only white people were allowed. Again, obviously wrong. Dr. King knew this, along with all those other activists. So what they would do is they organized these sit-ins where they would sit in these places for a very long time. Now you might be thinking, well, they just sat there. Why was that important? Because even with peaceful protest, the people who were in those spaces were not very nice about it. They would have to endure the people who were sitting in and boycotting. They would endure people yelling at them and being really, really mean, to put it lightly. Dr. King and many other activists had to train themselves to be able to endure this sort of torment of sitting there quietly, simply exercising their right to exist in that space, and to exist and not to move and not to be bossed around. All right, so as I'm working, You can see I'm adding in this red color only on the right side of the face. I'm also adding it sort of as like a shadow underneath the nose. And also a little bit onto the forehead. So I'm kind of adding it like that because I'm considering highlights where my shadows and sort of where a light source would be coming from, which would technically be on this left side of the picture. So my shadows are kind of going to accommodate for that. I'm also going to go ahead and fill in the top of his necktie down here with the red. Now you can see it's very simple shading here. If you want to really go into it, add lots of shading, be my guest. I'd love to see it. Okay, just working around. All right, I think that's good. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush and get the blue ready. So I'm going to take this blue and I'm going to go ahead and fill in some of those details here. Usually I'll do details last, but I'm going to go ahead and just take care of them now. So I'm going to fill in things like the mustache, the nostrils very carefully, the pupils, eyebrows, basically everywhere I put that very light layer of blue oil pastel, I'm going to add it in. I'm actually so glad this also happened because I can show you. If you accidentally get watercolor somewhere where you didn't intend to it, just take a paper towel and gently just tap that area and pick up that watercolor that maybe, you know, went into that space. No worries, let that dry for maybe a second and then you can just paint it back the way you wanted. Take this blue and fill in the eyes. And then I'll do the eyebrows. So you can see that oil pastel kind of adds this really cool texture. Gives us just a little bit of something interesting to the picture. Take that blue, we'll do the hair. Of course, still be careful, try not to go outside your lines. Take your time. There's no rush, so you don't need to feel like, again, don't feel like you need to try and finish at the same time as me. Go at your own pace. Pause the video when you need to. Right. Looks like my camera is picking up on the shine of the water because it's wet. I promise you, these areas are colored in dark blue. I'm trying to smooth that out a little bit. Maybe that'll help. Okay. Okay, I'm going to fill in this area here as well as on the jacket. And then on this side too. So Dr. King kind of calls us to peace through equality and justice. And through these things, our community becomes stronger. There are many activists today who still understand this. Obviously, things are different, but there are some things that are the same. So as we go into our weekend, and on Monday, it becoming MLK Day, I encourage us to kind of reflect on, what does peace look like? And what role can I play and help achieve peace? And for maybe some of us that might look different, that's okay. But it's still really important, I think, to think about because this day is really, it's about remembering, his work and his achievements, but it's also remembering and reflecting on, what things can we still achieve today to go along with his work. Now I'm actually gonna go ahead and add in some red on that upper lip. It's gonna make it a little bit more on the purple side, but that's just gonna help kind of balance out this color combination that's happening down here. Again, it's a little advanced, but you could still add some of that blue to the bottom of the nose. This is gonna help make that area even darker, make it more, have a stronger contrast. You can even take the blue and sort of like outline some of the areas around the red. Okay. the nose. We'll do a little bit on the chin. All right. You can add maybe like some shading onto the ear. I'll add a little shading here, add a little shading here on the eye. Maybe underneath. All right, so you could really get into this, like I said, with some shading, but if you're just looking for some very simple shading, this is where you can kind of leave it at. All right, now let's go ahead and fill in the background. So this side's gonna be red, this side's gonna be blue. I'm gonna go ahead and take my red paint. And the goal with the background, especially if you're using watercolor, is you want all of your strokes to go the same direction. This is going to help it look neat and organized and smooth, which we kind of want for this because again, we don't want a bunch of brush strokes right now taking away from the portrait. But if you're feeling creative and you can find a way to incorporate that into your picture, do it, go for it. I always encourage you to use your creativity and try out new things. Okay. Now for the word down here, you could fill that in if you want. Again, for the sake of the video, I'm just gonna leave it blank very much here so that you can see it. But you could fill that in with like a light blue. You could do light red if you want to, or you could also just leave it white. All right, I'm gonna clean off my brush and fill in this side with blue. You can see I'm using the same colors. This kind of makes it, again, just look more cohesive. You could use different blues, that's up to you. But I'm gonna be using just the same blue and red. And you could add more layers to this and make it darker. But definitely before you add your white paint pen on top, let everything dry. If you already added stuff in your background, like maybe you did it in oil pastel or you did it in like permanent marker, you probably don't have to worry about that step. But if you are adding things on top of the watercolor, you have to make sure it's dry first. All right, so if you wanted to do the project very simply, there you go. Feel free to add more things. You could add more shading, up the contrast. You could fill in the word. You can fill in other things too. Again, I'll go ahead and put my picture up, the example, one more time so that if you want to be more advanced about it and really get into that coloring, you can do so, okay? All right, so that just about does it for our project. I hope you had a lot of fun creating this project, and I hope you get the chance to sort of reflect on Dr. King's work. Maybe you can do some research this following weekend or when you can to see, you know, why is his work even more important? Maybe look up specifics. Of course, if you're going to do that, make sure you have your parents' help when surfing the web. All right, you guys, I hope to see you all again very soon. Bye for now.